Hi, my name is Rhesa Curry. I'm a certificated lactation educator counselor, and my journey began in January 2014 when I had my first son. I had already decided in my mind that I wanted to breastfeed my baby, so I went to breastfeeding classes, did some, Googling and things like that, like normal moms do. And I was pretty ready. I had a birth plan. I knew I wanted to deliver naturally. Um, I just knew I wanted to do things my way. So January 6th pops up and I go into labor with my son and my entire plan changes. Um, First, my water ended up breaking and I never end up laboring at all. So I was offered Pitocin by my hospital because I was told that, and this is, mind you, one of the best hospitals in California, top hospitals. I was told that I needed to go ahead and start Pitocin because if I didn't, today was Monday, and by Wednesday I wouldn't have had my baby. I was also told that I risked infection and so I tried to allow my body to labor, to do what it was going to do, but of course, having that stress, my body did absolutely nothing. So I was offered Pitocin, and of course, quite naturally, I ended up having an epidural. My son was delivered about 14 hours later, and he was placed on my chest, and immediately, it was just kind of a surreal experience because I didn't really know what was going on because the epidural had numbed one side of my body. I was shivering cold. I didn't feel what moms are supposed to feel when you first have your baby. And so I had my son on my body for about 30 minutes, and I asked, I didn't know really the proper procedure, but I asked him, could he be weighed, let's see how much he weighs. Can you go ahead and clean him up? Because I thought that was the proper procedure. He was weighed, and immediately they found that he was having breathing issues. So he was on my chest for about 30 minutes. They found out he was having breathing issues. After that, he was whisked away to the, what's that thing called? The nursery. And I found out later that he ended up being admitted into the NICU. So here I am, a new mom, and I don't have a baby. And at first it was okay because I was still kind of running off the adrenaline of just having had a baby. But when I was rolled into my hospital room, I saw the buggy where my baby should be, and he wasn't there. And that really hit me. Then I started to hear babies in other rooms crying, and that really hit me. But somehow, by the grace of God, I knew that I had to pump. So before the nurse even came in, I said, I need you to get me a pump in here. I need somebody to bring something in here because I thought there was a small window of time where I needed to pump for my baby. And so I started to pump quite naturally, not having had slept in 24 hours to no avail, no milk's coming out, nothing's coming out. And so quite naturally, I started to get discouraged. But I keep to it. Long story short, about a week later, my son was, he was still in the NICU. I had been sent home, and I started to feel really weird. I had numbness on the entire right side of my body. I could feel it in my head, down my arms, my legs, everything. So I called the OBGYN on call at that point in time, and like the brilliant person she was, she told me to get to the hospital immediately because I was having a stroke. My husband freaked out because at that time, it's like, who tells somebody over the phone that they're having a stroke? But nevertheless, I did. Now, mind you, my son is in the hospital. I've just delivered. My body's numb on one side. I have no idea what's going on with my body. I get to the hospital. I'm admitted, and then I have to, of course, they have to do a workup. I have to get CAT scans, and I have to do MRIs because they're trying to figure out what's wrong with me. Meanwhile, my baby is still in the NICU. I was never once told through my entire time being in the hospital that I should have been at my baby's side every time he fed to try to latch him onto my breast. All I knew was to pump. Mind you, I'm pumping to no avail. Turns out that I wasn't having a stroke, but I had an extremely bad infection that ended up spreading to my bloodstream. I had to stay in the hospital, and then I was later released. But when I got home, I had no connection with my baby. I felt like I didn't know who my child was. I didn't know who I was as a mother. And here I am still pumping. My son at that time had been placed on formula because quite naturally, if I wasn't producing milk, how else was he gonna get any milk? I wasn't offered donor milk. I wasn't offered anything else, and I also wasn't told to latch my son. I saw lactation consultants in the hospital. They taught me how to use the pump. Never once was I told that I should have been at my son's side, trying to nurse him, trying to get him to latch. So here I am 3 weeks later, and my son is on formula, and he projectile vomits across the room. And immediately, something in my body signaled that I didn't care what I had to do, what wasn't coming out, what was coming out, whatever the case may be, I had to nurse my baby. So I started with no help, nobody. My mom had never breastfed. I had nobody. And I remember being at a point in time where I wanted to completely give up. But I sent a text message to 4 people, one to my mom, and 1 or 2 of my friends who were breastfeeding moms. And it was the exact same identical text message that said that I wanted to give up and I couldn't do it anymore. It was too hard for me. I wanted to do the best thing for my baby, but I didn't know how. My mother and I, having had their own failures with breastfeeding, told me, it's okay if you put the baby on formula, the baby's gonna be fine. You survived off of it, but I knew in my heart that that's not what I wanted to do. I had one friend tell me, essentially, okay, if you don't breastfeed your baby, how's your baby gonna eat? She made it it was no longer an option for me. And then after that, I had a very good friend, Christian Beckley, who was actually on the video before me. She stopped everything she was doing. She came to my home. She bought me a nursing pillow, and she taught me how to latch my baby for the first time in my life. And he latched. And I couldn't believe it. It was nothing but God's grace that led her to do that. And mind you, I've known her since middle school, and we hadn't talked in years, and she got up and she did that for me. And she saved me and my baby's life because I went on to nurse my son for almost 2.5 years. And during the time, I suffered with postpartum depression and anxiety, more anxiety than anything. And at one point in time, I remember laying in bed with my son, and he was hungry, and I just was nursing him. And I thought about it later that if I had to fix a bottle, my son would have never eaten because I could not get up. I was not telling my story to people, letting them know what was going on with me. So fast forward to now, 5 months ago, I had my second son, and he latched from birth. And I had the confidence to do what I knew I could do because somebody advocated for me. And I guess I advocated for myself. It caused me to to become a lactation educator counselor, and I want to eventually become a lactation consultant because I want to help other people the way that she helped me.